We're here to get to work. We're here to think about how we can make this world a more prosperous, equitable, and better place. How can we do that at a time when you have some governments, economic power waged for geopolitical gain, or when this interconnected world, this very global world we have, itself throws up not just the great things that we've enjoyed about the global world, but problems like COVID, like the supply chain crisis? How do governments, businesses, investors work together to make a prosperous future, not just for themselves, not just for the few, but for the many? What's our compass? Well, FII just put out a survey. It is called, as you probably know, the Priority Compass. And some of the information inside of it is troublesome. Let me give you two facts. First off, 20% more people in 2023, when this survey was just done, are dissatisfied with their lives than in 2022, an increase of 20%. I think that's pretty dramatic. In addition to that, two out of three people surveyed say that they are concerned about the cost of living. Think about that. 2 out of 3. That's up from 1 out of 3 in 2022. So we have some thinking to do and some work to do. Let's get to it. Please, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us, Your Excellency.
I thought we'll be seated. Yeah, I thought they should.
Let me start with you, Your Excellency.
They should have done
the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 2022, fastest growing economy out of all the G20 countries with nearly 9% GDP, which is extraordinary. But I know that there'll be, skeptics in the room that'll say, well, sure, they were pumping 12 million barrels of oil a day, pulling in $1 billion a day, big surprise. But for me, what's even more fascinating is the fact that the non-oil economy grew by more than 6%. So as you diversify away from oil and build a more multifaceted economy, clearly you're doing something right. What can everyone in this room learn from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as it progresses along its path for Vision 2030?
Thank you, Ryan. First, on the numbers you mentioned, just to double-click on them, in the last 6 quarters, during 2022, when we posted 8.7% growth as the fastest in the G20, but even beyond that, the non-oil portion of our economy has been growing steadily at around between 5 and 6. And that's a very good, let's say, pace compared to the last 11 years. Q2, it was around 6.1%, driven by new sectors. This time around, it was heavily driven by exported services, mainly tourism, which grew 135% in Q2 over Q2 of last year. The quarter before that, we saw a bit of that and a bit of investments and a bit of construction, obviously, with the projects that we have. We're seeing more sectors contributing to our non-oil activity growth. That's all great. Why is this happening? It's because of Vision 2030. Vision 2030, or before Vision 2030, people don't realize the long-term view was not clear. And we went back to basics under the leadership of His Royal Highness, looked at our sources of strength, our areas of challenges, and started building a plan to capture our long-term challenges. With Vision 2030, it took a bold move that put a plan together and started executing it day in, day out. This is beyond the development of a sprint. We're beyond the sprint at this moment. Right now, we're at the level where this is part of our DNA, and it's always been. We're reviving something that always existed in a manner that is helping us diversify our economy, one of our challenges, empower the youth of Saudi Arabia, 63% are below the age of 30, and continue to build strong institutions that can help us weather any challenges moving forward.
Extraordinary. Mohamed Alabbar, if I might, you're in a number of businesses, let's put it that way, in the United Arab Emirates. Many would say you are the face of the private sector and business in the UAE. The UAE has made extraordinary strides economically over the last decade. What's the, you could talk forever about this, but in a condensed version, what is the secret to the UAE's economic progress thus far, given this very complicated world I was talking about earlier?
Well, the reality is that it's really not much different than anything else, and I really, I repeat what His Excellency said, is that you do have a plan of action that you go back and review and set the stage again. But I think it's action more than anything else. And I like what you said, Your Excellency, when you said it's continuous. It just doesn't stop. Yeah. Good leadership, which is good management, and putting a correct plan that you can come back and check and double check. But beyond all that, how daring are you? Are you really daring to act all these policies or the projects or philosophy? Are you really daring, the daring leadership to really make change in society to help it move forward, not just talking? And I really think that you can talk about the UAE and the amazing result it has achieved over the past years because of planning, leadership, action. But also if you just look back the past few years and see how massive the change in the kingdom is. And this is a bigger economy, this is a more complex economy, more complex history compared to us. So I would say that really what's happening in Saudi Arabia is just so motivating for all of us to see and also relearn how to move forward with massive size of an economy. But more than anything else, I would just say, how dare you? Can you act? Can you really move forward? Because a lot of people doubt us, doubt every government. I'm not saying UAE or Saudi Arabia, but we start planning, economic planning, or even business plan. But then, are you going to go ahead and move forward? And that's the challenge in most of these economies. And with my respect, the trouble with democratic systems is that Republicans are in, 4 years you're going left, and then Democrats come then, and then you go right, and then, the poor public. And I'm not criticizing democracy, I'm just saying that continuously it's so critical to really see a plan through.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Bill, do you care to, as an American, do you care to weigh in on the political chaos in the United States? But in addition to that, what I think is nice about this panel
I'm sorry, I don't mean it in any bad way.
Bill was just telling me about how he wants to talk about the political impasse in the United States and how it's killing him. No, but seriously speaking, and you're welcome to address that, we've heard that it's important to be audacious and daring. What I like about this panel is the idea is how can government, business, investors work together to really do more than just enrich ourselves, right? Build a society where everyone is enjoying in that. So you're in private equity. You've got a global outlook. How does General Atlantic build that into, how are you contributing to building prosperity when we got a kind of fractured world out there, in addition to a fractured American political landscape?
Well, Ryan, thank you. It's great to be on the panel with some old and new friends. I think we heard it from Mohamed and His Excellency about creating the conditions for economic success and economic growth. And the thing that gets me very excited about what's happening here in the region, the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, is the entrepreneurship and innovation that's starting to take hold. Speaking of boldness, I mean, we're seeing talented people come back to the region to start businesses and really aspire to create great new companies in areas like healthcare, consumer, digital. And one measure of that and the success that's happened here in the kingdom is the IPO market. If you went back to 2018, there was only $300 billion raised in IPOs on the Saudi exchange. Last year was $9 billion. And to me, that's a signal that you're starting to see private business, private entrepreneurs be daring, starting companies, grow them here, and capitalize on the economic growth. And to me, that's exciting, and it's what we've what we've seen and invested in places like China, India, Latin America. But it's the economic dynamism in the kingdom, in the Emirates, it's refreshing, it's exciting, and I think it's just beginning, actually.
Thank you, Doctor. I'll let you talk about politics later. Or Dr. Heikal, you can. Like Bill, Dr. Heikal, you're an investor, a global investor, but with a huge focus on Africa. You're one of the biggest investors in Africa, moving out from Egypt. You know, you can't talk about the cost of living crisis without talking about energy security and food security. As things have, you know, we use this word geoeconomic, as things have gotten more geoeconomic over the last couple of years, you could argue, you know, we've seen food and energy prices skyrocket. So how do you, as an investor, working with government and business, help countries in, let's say, Africa, build the kind of resilience and self-sufficiency necessary to deal with this problem, which is, you know, hugely weighing on people?
Let me focus first on energy. I think energy, the flows of energy around the world have changed dramatically after the Ukraine crisis, because Russia was supplying energy to the West. That has been broken, and instead Europe is now taking on energy from the Gulf, and both in terms of oil and in terms of natural gas. And that is very well explained by the Suez Canal proceeds. Suez Canal proceeds have skyrocketed recently over the last 2 years as a result of this phenomenon. Ships are now moving more and more from the Gulf, moving towards Europe, both for natural gas and liquid petroleum products. On top of that, we we have a company, a subsidiary called Taqa Arabia. Taqa Arabia supplies energy, various sources of energy, to 5 million people in Egypt today. And what we have been doing is that we've noticed a substantial markets in Africa where the distribution of energy has taken hold, both in terms of fueling car with CNG, compressed natural gas, and supplying electricity. So you have today a big continent where the infrastructure exists in the form of high-pressure natural gas, but this high-pressure natural gas, there is no network for everyday people. So households, commercial, industrial, etc. So they have this big infrastructure, but it's underutilized. So we have now started in Mozambique, in Tanzania, and obviously also Saudi Arabia is a phenomenal market, and we've just established a joint venture here in Saudi to distribute energy. So without energy, you cannot, without energy availability at people's houses, the economies will not function. So you can make a world a better place by making the infrastructure and the last mile, so to speak. It's more than a mile, but the last mile in order to make energy available to everyday people.
Thank you. Your Excellency, we've now used the word geoeconomics a couple of times. There's a lot of different ways to define it. Maybe it's something akin to trade warfare, I don't know, but the idea of using your economy for geopolitical aims. Is that like is this a thing as far as you're concerned? And how does the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia deal with that, working with investors and businesses to continue to deliver for your people?
Well, I don't think it's new that some countries use economic tools for geopolitical repositioning or vice versa. I think this is something that's always been going on. Maybe we're noticing it now because of the quote-unquote rise of populism, nationalism. Maybe we're seeing a bit of a slowdown in global trade. The last few years at 3%. Before that, it was at 10%. But I think the key word is that we're still an interconnected planet, more so than before. We can see it today with the exchange of ideas and innovation and culture, not just goods and services and people. And I think there's room for more collaboration. And what Saudi Arabia wants to do, this is spelled out in our vision and beyond, is that we not only want to become an investment powerhouse where Saudi's capital and the regional capital is an attractive element, but a platform powerhouse, or an economy that is based on this platform that really attracts capital from around the world, human capital, actual capital, into the Saudi platform to leverage on the cleanest hydrocarbon energy, the cheapest renewable energy, the boldest carbon removal solutions, the energy of the youth, as we said before, and many more things like the clarity of our institutions and our policy, our transparent performance culture. All of this coupled with our engagement globally, not just politically and diplomacy, or not just security, but now on the economics, trade and investment, and also technical assistances with our neighbors who need it, and vice versa, lessons learned. So this makes this platform an attractive place for the world to accelerate any lost connectivity or any lost, let's say, collaboration in this changing world.
Fascinating. And I saw that PIF just agreed a deal with Hyundai to build a second car plant in the kingdom. How does that fit in with this strategy that you're talking about?
Well, we have a lot of special zones, economic zones, logistic zones, et cetera, et cetera. We want to diversify our economy. Simply, we want to rely more on activity related to products we make and services that are exported competitively globally. And we realize that EVs and internal combustion engines are a nucleus for the creation of a cluster that can trickle down to other industrial and advanced manufacturing venues we want to open to diversify our economy. That's one example. Shipbuilding is another example. Esports is another different example. When we talk about the trickle-down effect on programming, coding, and the ability to add value and knowledge transfer in this world. And there are many more examples that we're focusing on as well.
Thank you very much. Mohamed Alabbar, if I could. So, one of the things that we've seen in the region and in the UAE is, as part of the region, is this move towards technology and technology as a driver of economic growth. It's a relatively new trend. I'm not sure, I think a lot of people in this room know this, but in addition to building, one, two, a couple thousand buildings, including some very tall ones, you're also very active in the digital space. You founded noon.com. So where does this push to go into using technology and getting more into the tech industry and the digital space, where does that fit in with economic strategy? And does it have given we're talking about geoeconomics, does it have a political dimension?
Yeah. I think if you were just to look at our daily lives, if you're in the Middle East, you probably spend 5 hours of your day, 5.5 hours on your phone. So that really tells you everything.
Yeah.
So, your banking on the phone, your news on the phone, your relationships on the phone, your life is on the phone. So it's not really so much the phone, but it's just this digital life that we all entrenched in. And I think the whole world is moving that way. Therefore, you see that all these new young economies like Saudi Arabia, like the Emirates, like the region in general, they have quite a big focus. And we should have more focus for one main reason is that we have the highest percentage of young people in the world. I mean, Saudi Arabia probably 60% below the age of 29 or so. So that really tells you that without technology, I don't think we are going to engage with our population. But also, more importantly than that, is that without technology, we cannot create the business of tomorrow. Because nowadays, we all know that, the idea of Bill Gates, starting his first, building his first computer in his garage is not valid anymore. Because every boy and every young girl, they're in their shorts in their home doing things and selling them to the world. And that's all driven by technology. Now, the thing that worries me is that most of us, we don't know technology, honestly. Most of us, we don't know technology. So I think it's our duties that we should educate ourselves and entrench ourselves into it. And we were just joking before the session, and we said, everybody's talking about AI, but AI will help us at least manage the world better than us as human beings, because you've got financial crisis that are happening now in the world. You've got democratic system that doesn't work, which I'm a believer that AI will check, for example, in country A, will check your Facebook pages, what you watch. It's going to check your phone bill. Do you call your mother once a week or 5 times a week? And then it will check your credit card expenses and social media posts. And then it will realize, this guy calls his mother every single night before he goes to bed. While that guy, he calls her once a month. No, I think this guy will be good for our society and for the future, I hope. So I think it's a fact of life. We're already in technology. It's just we really have to move there. I mean, I don't care what your business is. I'm not talking about e-commerce, but if you are in banking, if you are in real estate, if you are in pharmaceutical, technology drives. I mean, let's look at our boring business in Emaar properties. Okay, we built the buildings, but actually Oracle and Salesforce actually runs our business. We almost don't need anybody.
It's just so interesting. I think countries that are beginning to realize that digital public infrastructure is just as important as physical infrastructure to driving economic development. And you can see it here in the region, how important digital is and how key a role it's played to development. But one other place we invest where I've learned a lot from is India, where you took a country that was basically not digital at all, and through its Aadhaar digital identity system and then an open standard for payments, took a population that had 10% banked to 80% banked and on digital platforms. And if you think about financial inclusion and inclusion of services for education, for healthcare, being part of the digital economy is a prerequisite. And I think the countries that get that right and build the right kind of digital public infrastructure are going to get an advantage. And I think it's going to show up in the economic growth numbers as it has in the region here.
Your Excellency.
I just wanted to say, it seems, Mohamed, you have a business plan for that AI solution. Maybe we should look at it and see if it's...
I wish I know it. I honestly need Your Excellency, I need a course to understand it, but I know that it knows too much. I have to tell you this little story that their newcomer system now that we're installing, that actually on a daily basis, it will tell us what percentage of our customers in our hotels are happy and not happy.
Wow.
They're wearing masks, and the aim is customer service. But instead of doing the old boring, fill in and I ask you how you feel, how is the service, it's just but I agree with you, it's everywhere.
It's digital.
Bill, if I could pick on you for a second, because we're talking about the digital economy and how to use technology to drive your economy. General Atlantic invested in TikTok and ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, and ended up in the middle of this gigantic geoeconomic spat between no less than the United States and China, huge economic power. So I don't want you to relitigate that. I know it's a painful thing for you to go into, but what can people in this room learn from, what can you share about how, when you're an investor, one of your portfolio companies gets into these situations, how do you navigate that?
Well, I think what we're finding is that if you just step back and look at ByteDance and TikTok, TikTok has 1.1 billion daily active users outside of China every day, 850 million daily active users every day on its system. You're closing in on 2 billion people. And the reality is that when you have that kind of scale, that kind of ubiquity, you're touching on issues of public policy. You're touching on issues of government. And those of us who, frankly, really operate in the private sector realize that engagement with government, understanding their issues, getting ahead of it. I know a lot of the conversation at the FII this year is about AI and what are the right policies that governments need to think about, both to capitalize on the benefits of AI, but also recognize that there are issues and there are risks. And I think as investors we've learned we have to engage with government, get ahead of it, because they are significant.
Thank you. Dr. Heikal, I want you to do 2 things. First off, I know you're a huge investor or philanthropist when it comes to education.
you do a lot for education. So how does that, how can investors and businesses use that as a tool to deal with this, geoeconomic problem that we're talking about, and also, of course, lift prosperity?
Today, youth, they need hope. And you cannot give hope without social mobility. And you cannot have education unless you have education. Education causes social mobility, causes advancement, causes the prospect of a better life. So when I came back from university studies at Stanford, I spent 5 years at Stanford doing my master's and my PhD. When I came back, we established 2 foundations. We did well, and we established 2 foundations. One foundation was for giving master's scholarships to people who got accepted to the best universities in the US and in Europe. And you cannot imagine the type of people and the shift in their career. I have now 20 years of that scholarship. So we've sent 270 people throughout those 15, 17 years. And I have seen those people come back to Egypt and what sort of change they have made. And I was recently on a call with a government official. And after the call, there was a fantastic lady that was on the call. And after the call, she said, I have to admit that I owe a lot to the Qalaa Holding Scholarship Foundation, because without their scholarships, I would not have been here, and I owe this thank to the founders of Qalaa Holdings. You cannot imagine the type of people that go and come back, and huge change. How many people can afford $100,000 per year for 2 years, even for a master's in our part of the world? In Egypt, I would imagine that this can be a very, very few number in terms of percentage. So by opening up this, it's hugely important to give hope to a lot of people.
Thank you very much. Mohamed Alabbar, that was very inspirational. I want to give you 1 minute to address your fellow investors, business people, government officials in this room. Your call to action. How do we, as I was saying at the beginning, create prosperity for the many, not just a few? Everyone in here has done pretty well in this complicated world.
Well, I think if you look at globally, I really believe that we will live through a turbulence for a very, very long time. And I really think that we as responsible businessmen and businesswomen, we really have to know how to manage in turbulence. Therefore, if we don't have enough experience from 2006 and Corona and what's going on in Ukraine, then we don't know how to manage. So I think it's our responsibility to understand that it will not be smooth. Therefore, manage your cash flow and work hard. That's number 1. Number 2, the region as a whole and Asia as a whole has great opportunities. I operated in Singapore and Vietnam and all these countries and came back to my home base in the Middle East. The opportunities that exist in the Middle East are endless. And I just say, as Your Excellency said, just review and take action. There are tremendous opportunities, but the opportunity that I see with my children and the neighborhood where I live in is that the number of young people working from home and making things and selling to the world is something really, give me great hope for the future of all the youth in the Middle East.
Thank you. Bill.
I think we have to invest in human capital. We heard about it from Ahmed about how important it is. That's my hope for the future, is recognize human capital. Young people, as we heard this morning, will make all the difference, and we can't neglect investing in their education and human capital.
And just for those of you who don't know in the room, the founding investor of General Atlantic was a huge philanthropist who passed away, just 2.5 weeks ago now.
Yeah, the 30-second version is our founding investor, Chuck Feeney, was the founder of the duty-free shopper business and spent the first half of his life and career building a great entrepreneurial business, but the second half of his career being a world-class philanthropist where he gave away $8 billion.
Amazing.
All of his money.
All of his wealth, and really invented the idea of giving while living. But his call to action to all of us would be, we have an obligation, given the success we've had, to give back to the world and make it a better place with both our personal time as well as our financial resources. And that would have to be a call to action for the conference this week.
Thank you very much.
Bless him.
Your Excellency.
I just wanted to comment just quickly on human capital. I think everything starts with people, and everything we do here is for the people. And the region, Saudi Arabia and the region, we have one of the youngest populations around the world. Even if you can't think of it in any other way, if you only think about it commercially, this is a talent that deserves a lot of stability and a lot of opportunity. And I think under Vision 2030, we're demonstrating an exemplar version of that. My message, if you will, is that I'll go back to your comment, Mohamed, on the need to be bold, and I keep discussing this with my colleagues and my team. The nice thing about Vision 2030 and what's in the DNA of Saudi Arabia from day one is the audacity. In Arabic, we say jasara, that led to the creation of Vision 2030. And it takes bold moves, audacity, but also the basics, the fundamentals. Day in, day out action, day in, day out review of the results, and strengthening your fundamentals. And I think for that reason, Saudi Arabia and the rest of the region is for all our audience, investors, governments, policymakers, innovators, entrepreneurs, the private sector, the public sector. And by the way, you don't have to have a strong private sector or a strong public sector. You can have strong public and private sectors and NGOs that work well together. And for all of these reasons, I truly believe Saudi Arabia is your long-term reliable partner in this changing world.
We've got to leave it there. I'm so sorry. That was very, very interesting. Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists and also welcoming Richard Quest up for our next session. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I think it worked nicely.